for me to know the breakdown of people who are here. So first of all, if you're primarily a researcher of any kind, could you raise your hand? Loads and loads and loads and loads. Right. If you're primarily a teacher or educator of any kind, can you raise your hand, please? A few scattered around, looking at the researchers' paychecks. Yeah, no doubt. And if you're primarily involved in policy in any sort of way, can you raise your hand? There we go. Right, those are the people who can turn off during events. My name's Steve Cross. Just so that you know the kind of stuff that I do, I used to be a lab scientist. I have a PhD in molecular biology, which many of you will know is the science of moving tiny amounts of liquid from one tube to another, and then 6 months later realising it hasn't worked. I left lab science. I then worked in the science centre industry. I was head of exhibitions and events at the Centre for Life in Newcastle for a couple of years. Then I worked in museums. Have any of you been up to the first floor of this building? The two big permanent galleries. You know, there's like a dark brown and a dark red one, and a white and red one. I curated those. That is 3 years of my life, and £2 million as well. After that, I became head of public engagement at University College London, so I'm used to supporting researchers of all kinds who are interested in taking their work beyond academia and out into communities that aren't research-focused. I'm now freelance. I have 3 jobs. The first one is I'm a Wellcome Trust Public Engagement Fellow. I should emphasise Wellcome does not employ me. So if I say anything that you don't like, there's no point complaining to them. They work for me. The second job that I have is I'm a public engagement consultant to universities and cultural organisations, and my third job is I'm a stand-up comedian. Yes, I realise I put a slide of me wearing this shirt in my talk. Didn't think this morning, did the slides at the weekend and sent them off. Didn't look at them, put the shirt on. Embarrassing. We'll deal with that later. The kind of stuff that I focus on these days is work where public engagement touches comedy and touches working with organisations. So I run a programme called Science Show-Off, where I travel around the country blurring the lines of who's allowed to talk about science in public, so empowering people who aren't professional scientists to talk about science alongside scientists in a comedy format. And I also run a big mentoring scheme called the Show-Off Talent Factory, where I take 15 people a year, 50% researchers, 50% people involved in wider engagement and communications, and I give them the support and the opportunities and the mentoring and the contacts that they need to become big members of a public engagement community. So just as an example, this is Alex Lethbridge, who's one of my mentees, performing to 700 people at the Blue Dot Festival at Jodrell Bank. You can't quite see, but all the chairs are full, all the grass has people sitting on it, all the doorways are wedged solid. That is a crowd to watch somebody who's doing a PhD in computational biochemistry give a talk. There's a big push within the mentoring scheme that I'm doing around diversity and around moving away from the idea that people who talk about science are all old white men. So I'm working a lot with women, a lot with people of colour, a lot with people with disabilities and long-term health issues, and a lot with people who are somewhere on the LGBTQ+ spectrum. And they come up with their own formats. So if you were at the Edinburgh Fringe last year, you will have seen my mentees running a show for the entire Fringe based on using science to answer everyday questions. They did so well they made money at the Edinburgh Fringe, which anyone who's ever tried it will know is pretty much unheard of. So I'm here to talk to you a bit about how to make science accessible to the general public. And I'd like to start by saying I'm not really interested in making science accessible. One of the things I want to help you understand is that the job is to make science accessed. And there's a really big difference from something being open to anyone coming to it to actually members of the public using it, reading it, taking advantage of it and being part of it. So that's the first switch I want you to take. The second one is I'm going to demolish the idea of the general public and try and get you to think about who you actually need to communicate to and why. So just as an example, I get a lot of researchers who come to me and say, Steve, my employer, my department, my supervisor says that my outreach and communication doesn't have any value. Can you come and talk to them and win them over and make them understand that what I do is important? And sometimes I actually can't. And the reason I can't is their outreach might be really interesting in its own terms, but it's not really trying to achieve anything. And so I've put up as an example the Wellcome Trust, because they give me money, they're always my first example, for for everything that I do. This is an example of how an organisation that puts a lot of time, money and effort into engagement and communication thinks about it. They don't do things because they sound like a fun idea or they sound interesting. They do things because they think there's a genuine outcome that can arise from the project and can change the way that a group interacts with health or with medical research or with science. So you can see that they can break those outcomes down into different things. Just as another example, this is the way that the Medical Research Council thinks about all of its communication and engagement. Every time they work with any group, they're trying to think about how do we change the attitude of that group? How do we actually have something afterwards that we can look at and say, our communication activity was worth it because it changed these people forever. And you can see they break down the people that they want to talk to. Good luck if you are a researcher trying to work with parliamentarians on MRC time, because they actually want you to get policymakers to secure advocacy for the MRC. They want people saying, isn't the MRC a wonderful thing? That is a very difficult job. This is a grid that I put in front of researchers on a regular basis. Every time they go, Steve, I want to do a 3-day festival of brain science. And I say, okay, great, why? And they go, so I put this in front of them. So this is one way of thinking about, for any piece of communication you do, for any piece of engagement you're going to do, what is going to be different after you finish it? How will you have changed the people who are involved in its awareness, attitudes, skills, or power? When I say power, this is things like how are you going to give patients control over their own treatment? How are you going to give teachers control over their own curriculum? How are you going to help people who don't have power now have power through your engagement process? The second thing I wanted to talk to you about was this idea of who you're engaging with, because I see, especially in the UK, huge amounts of communication and research and public engagement with research aimed at a very, very small group of the population. If you sit and break down who absorbs most of the popular science in the UK, it is people with science degrees who regularly go to science events. We spend a lot of money telling people things they already know in slightly entertaining ways. And I think that's a real problem. And it's a problem that comes from us seeing the audience for communication as the general public and only worrying about how many members of the general public we get in. So what I'd like to urge you to do is, for all the communication that you're thinking about to anyone in the public, I want you to think, who is the group that I actually need to talk to? Because if you just try and talk to everybody, realistically, you end up talking to people very similar to you. And so you can break down an audience in different ways. You can do it by age. You can say, I want to meet people of a certain age. A really big one for a lot of you, thinking about these issues around education, might be parents of young children, for instance. You want parents of young children who come from a specific area, because that's the place where you want to influence the curriculum, or influence the way that schools work. And you can break down your audience like that, and that will help you decide what communication to do. I would just like to summarise the challenge. Traditionally, as universities and research centres, our answer to how do we make our science accessible has been, we'll do some public lectures. Because public lectures are open to everybody. They're free, therefore everybody can come. This is from a study called Public Attitudes to Science, which is done every 3 or 4 years in the UK. It is a gold standard kind of social science study. It actually looks at a representative sample. One of the things we find is that 1% of the British population might go to a public lecture, conference or seminar in a given year. And you can imagine that that 1% will mostly be people who work in universities, students in universities, or retired people who have more than 1 degree already. And if that's your strategy for communicating, for instance, to parents of young children, you will fail. So you can't put on the thing that is the easiest for you to put on. And the thing that you traditionally put on, you have to put on the form of communication that actually suits the audience that you're going to. I wanted to finish, having done a couple of big bits of theoretical work, by giving you some practical examples of things that you can be thinking about now. So once you take on this idea that you want your communication to actually work, what can you do from here? And the first one is to actually use the professional help that's already available to you. Researchers, most of your employers will have press officers, and most of your employers will have some form of public engagement support or science communication support. You might not know who it is. Most researchers don't know who it is. have a dig through your university's website and you'll find them. This is Professor Sophie Scott, who I worked with while I was at University College London. She was brilliant at saying, I have this whole new area of research that I'm opening up, and she would talk to the press office and find out how she could communicate through the British media around the work she was doing effectively, and she would talk to my team, the public engagement team, about what she was doing. And we've helped her have this huge international profile around the work she's doing in the psychology of emotions. And to give you an idea of the big things she's been involved with, she did a talk at TED, not TEDx, but actual grown-up TED, which you can watch if you're flying across the Atlantic. It is on the things you can select from the TV screen in front of you. She was also the Royal Institution Christmas lecturer last year, so use all the help you already have. The other thing to do is, if there's an audience you want to reach, it's very difficult to say, I want to reach out to parents of young children in North London who come from second-generation immigrant backgrounds, but I don't know any. The answer is, there are organisations that do. So I put this photo up as an example of an organisation who came to me, Bishopsgate Institute, and they said, our public events programme doesn't have very many people who come along to it who are between the ages of 20 and 40. What can you do? So now we run collaborative history comedy shows featuring women's history, LGBT history, the history of activism, and we get in the young audience that they wanted all this time. I was their cultural partner that could give them the audience they needed. The other thing is that there's a specific audience you want to meet, and having seen some slides, I think you're about to get an amazing example of this. Yes, good. It builds exactly the product that audience wants. So this group are the makers of Why Aren't You Adopting Yet? The person with their mouth open the widest is Alex Lackridge, who I showed you earlier. Alex is really interested in connecting with people of colour in Britain who are towards the end of their schooling, so 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and even people at university thinking about research careers. But he realised that if he did normal science communication, he would never reach those people. So what he's done is built a product that is entirely aimed at those people, and that is his podcast. It is entirely a group of 2 professional scientists, 2 professional communicators, and he partnered up with Sahel, who is the person with their mouth the least open. I'm trying not to use a laser pointer to indicate people. Sahel is a radio producer who's worked for BBC One Extra, which is the radio station targeted at exactly the same demographic that Alex is trying to reach. And when they try to raise awareness of this programme, they don't do it on the radio stations that are listened to by predominantly older people. They don't do it on BBC Two, they've done it on BBC Three, which is again the one aimed at young people. But whatever you do, I urge you, be led by what your audience needs. Going back to my slide earlier, 3% of the UK population go to a science festival in a given year. And again, they tend to be people with science degrees. But this is an example from Queen Mary University of London, who put on a communities festival instead of a science festival. The communities festival isn't on campus, it's in a park where lots of people go on a summer's day anyway. Crucially, the festival this year was held on May the 12th, which is a terrible time for universities. It's exam period. Staff are busy, students are busy, but it was the last Saturday before Ramadan, and because there's a large number of Muslim communities live around Queen Mary University of London, they realised nobody is going to come to a festival where a lot of it is food related and drink related during Ramadan from those communities. So the university took the choice of doing something that was inconvenient for them, but convenient for their audience. They were completely packed with exactly the kinds of people they wanted, and they changed minds in exactly the way they wanted to. So these people who'd never heard of Queen Mary are now talking about it as a valuable part of their local community. The last thing I'd like to urge you to do is when you start thinking about communicating your work, it's very easy to think, I have to hold on for that big offer, for National Geographic to offer me a TV series to talk about it. It's very difficult to get there, and it's very difficult to know what communication and engagement is going to work in the first place. So I want to encourage you to try little things. Do experiments, podcasts, blog, get on Twitter, start getting involved with the communities you want to interact with. And just as a very strange example, 2 years ago I was a comedian in residence on a £2 million project looking at the relationship between humans and chickens over the last 5,000 years. There were very good reasons for this. They got basically a lot of newspapers made very nasty jokes about them when their funding was announced. So they hired me to train train them up to make nasty jokes back. These are all the ways to contact me if you would like to talk to me further, but I will be down here for panel discussion and I think we're having coffee in a bit, so I'll be there for that as well. Thanks very much for your time.
Just to say, we'll do questions to the whole panel.
Hi, I'm Dr. Yana Weinstein, a professor at UMass Lowell. I'm Dr. Megan Samaraki, a professor at Rhode Island College. So we're here from the States. Just got here yesterday, so we're a little tired. We are not stand-up comedians, and we are shorter than Steve, so we're adjusting that. That's the best I can do. Adjusting the microphone. So we're going to be talking a little bit about our project, the Learning Scientists Project, and trying to make our research and the research from cognitive psychology accessible. I suppose we started thinking about making it accessible to the general public, and very early on we learned, and what Steve just mentioned, we should stop worrying about the general public and stop calling it the general public and start focusing on the people that we actually wanted to talk to. And so we needed to do some thinking about who we actually wanted to talk to, and that's going to be the first little part of this talk. So when we're flying over, long flights or what have you, people next to us will often say, "What do you do?" And we have learned the hard way not to say I'm a psychologist, because that invites a lot of conversation pieces that we're not interested in nor trained to deal with. Yes, there we go. All right, so oftentimes what we say is we're researchers and we like to spread the word of science. You can say that you're a statistician. That often ends any sort of conversation. We don't want to chat, but talking about spreading the word of science is essentially what we do. So we apply cognitive psychology to education, and that's always what we've done, at least from the point where we're at university and going into graduate school. But we realized very early on, at least relatively speaking, when we were new professors, that we were writing these journal articles and we were doing rigorous research and things that have a lot of applied value. I'll talk about that in a second. But we were then writing in peer-reviewed journal articles, and we'd have our little section at the end, how can teachers apply our work, us telling them what to do with little to no knowledge of what's actually going on in those classrooms and without the ability to have bi-directional conversations. And we realized that no one was paying any attention, and with good reason. One, why would you just read, the end of a little journal article and have someone tell you what you should do, even though they, have nothing to do with your day-to-day lives? But also, access to those journals is almost impossible. The story I love to tell, nothing about Rhode Island College, but I actually once had to beg the library to give me access to the article I'd written. And I'm at an institution of higher education, and so if I'm having to do that just so that I can legally give it, out to my students, what does that mean for someone who doesn't have access to that type of library? So we realized pretty quickly there's just no way this was going to work. So we started talking to others. We started talking on Twitter, and we wanted to help pupils, students, study better. And sort of organically, what ended up happening is we started talking more to teachers, realizing that then there's this sort of umbrella effect where if we're talking to teachers from younger students up through high school, GCSEs, A-levels, up through university, that they can then talk to their pupils, and it's a larger effect. The teachers are really they're driving the driving force. And so we started talking with teachers and listening with teachers. That was really an important part of our early work in order to sort of access and gain trust in this population, is to listen as well and make it a bi-directional conversation as opposed to us lecturing to them, even though it's sort of what we're kind of doing now. So how do we apply cognitive psychology to education? One of the first issues, at least for our area, was really to talk about how we're doing that and what the value of it is. So we're basically taking basic cognitive processes like memory, attention, and perception, and then we are building learning strategies and teaching strategies on top of those things. So we're not just starting from scratch. We're taking what we already know and building on top of it. And one of the ways we do that is through this lab to classroom model. There's a misconception, although it's not actually a misconception, there's some truth to it, but a lot of people think, well, cognitive psychologists do basic lab work. Word lists, even nonsense syllables, kind of the opposite of what you're trying to teach students in the classroom. And that's true, we do that, we start there. Because it allows us to gain control over the learning situation and allows us to determine cause and effect relationships. And once we can determine cause and effect relationships, we're on better footing to build and go to the applied laboratory setting, where now we're taking more complex materials like textbook chunks or a portion of a lecture video and having the students learn that information, still in the lab where we can try to control things, although it's very difficult to get students to put their cell phones away. So it's kind of like when they're in the library studying, they're sort of sneaking and checking. And we can build up from there. And then finally we end up in the applied classroom where we're actually in the live setting, having teachers alter their instruction and taking a look. We lose some control there, but now we have a real life setting. And it's taking all three of these together that allows us to make suggestions and talk with teachers about what will work in their classroom, because we have those cause and effect relationships and we know, at least to some extent, how they're functioning in the real setting. And it doesn't have to be linear, right? We go back all the time, constantly moving. I think in my lab currently I have at least one project at every one of these levels at the same time. So we're moving back and forth all the time. So what we can do as cognitive psychologists is try to develop flexible guiding principles, sort of like being a doctor. You don't just take one specific set of symptoms and say, whenever I see this, I prescribe X drug at X amount, regardless of the context or situation. They use somewhat flexible guiding principles about what they know to make recommendations and prescriptions. They're using the context. And it's important for teachers to do that too, and that helps with the need for this bi-directional communication. We can ask questions about how and why things work, and we can try to understand when things work, and also what's going on when things don't work so that we can make adjustments. And then finally, we can ask teachers what research questions we should pursue. So it is very, very important to us to make sure that what we're talking about is relevant, and to make sure that we all have a seat at the table, essentially. Now, we do know that teachers have a lot of sources of information, or dare I say, sources of pressure, right? So you have yourself, you have your peers, there's students, parents, leaders, politicians, and then here we are, one additional little square, with an arrow pointing at you, saying, here's some information, and we don't want it to feel that way. We want it to be another tool in the toolbox that we can all talk about and use to try to make sure that we're maximizing learning. And a lot of what we do is looking at ways that we can make small but impactful changes rather than talking about overhauling an entire class or curriculum that many don't even have control over. Unless, of course, you do have control over it and you want to do the big overhaul. Okay. So Yana, I think, is going to talk a little bit about our project and some of the work we've done with Welcome.
Yeah, so the Learning Scientists Project was really born out of this desire to communicate with teachers and students and also parents about learning from a cognitive psychology perspective. This project was born accidentally on Twitter. I won't go into the story, but if you want to hear it later, come and ask us. But it started on Twitter very casually, and then very quickly we realized there was a lot of interest and that we would have to formalize it and do something beyond just tweeting at strangers. So we started a blog that we update frequently, and then we also developed a bunch of resources that I'll describe to you now. We do have a set of goals and kind of a vision, which goes back to what Steve was saying with respect to actually framing what you're doing with specific outcomes. And we had, luckily, the help of Megan's now husband, who's a strategic communication expert, who kind of took massive ideas and broke it down into, okay, what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of what you're trying to do? What are I don't remember the other parts of it because we didn't know what we were doing, but he did. So he helped us.
Steve said that little
Right. So we looked at that and we developed our goals. And so the vision that we have is to make scientific research and learning more accessible. And three audiences that we thought about, apparently parents didn't enter into our original vision, but now we think of it as students, teachers, other educators, and parents as well, because they're an important part of it. As we started speaking to teachers, they would say, well, what about parents? We need the parents to be on board, and that's kind of how we got to that point. our original aims were really to, I like to say, to make studying cool again. It's probably never going to happen, and it was never cool in the first place. Make studying something that students are excited to do, and we think that we might be able to do that by helping students to use effective study strategies so that when they study, they actually get to their goals rather than getting frustrated or spending time doing things that are ineffective. And another kind of goal that we have is this notion of testing, which is often used to refer to standardized testing or to unnecessary time wasted on testing. We wanted to reframe that, and our specific research is about retrieval practice, which is the use of tests to actually enhance or improve memory. And so we wanted to kind of reframe this dirty word testing, especially in the US, as like a trigger word. So we started out with our blog, and then we got some funding from the Association for Psychological Science, and we were able to produce these illustrated posters that some of you may have seen that talk about strategies for effective learning based on decades of cognitive psychology research. They were illustrated and described in very simple ways, and they were aimed at students. And so the idea would be that college students could use them independently, younger students and pupils in classrooms could use them with the help of their teachers. The teachers have been putting them on walls. And then we managed to get some funding to translate these posters into many languages, and that project is ongoing. We're always adding new translations, and as a result, we now get tweets frequently from people around the world who say, "Hey, look, your posters are hanging up in our classroom in different languages. I think this is French over here." So that's always nice to see, and well, hopefully they're actually being used by students and they're using them to study as opposed to just decorating the classroom. But we do hear a lot of feedback about schools that have started to implement these strategies as part of their learning to learn curriculum. We've also created the same resources but as PowerPoint so that teachers can go through them and then hand the posters to students. And we also recorded videos. Now, videos, I was really listening to what Steve was saying when he said, don't do the thing that you find easy and interesting. Do the thing that targets your audience. I hate videos, or at least I did, until I had to make them. Now I'm like, okay, they're not so bad. But, I would have to be paid to sit through like a 5-minute video on something. I'd rather just read it really quickly. But it turns out students go on YouTube and they can pass lots and lots of time just clicking through different videos, including how to study videos instead of actually studying. So we did a little bit of research into the kinds of videos that students or that our young adult audience would be likely to actually look at. And so they had to be very short, we had to speak pretty quickly, have animations just to grab attention. So that's how we did these videos. They were pretty amateur, but they do the job of kind of very quickly explaining a strategy, and then that can be followed up with the posters. And then actually somebody from Australia contacted us because they wanted to make a sketch note animation video that was much more professional. This has like 2 million views on YouTube, and it's very popular on there. And it summarizes all of the learning strategies in one longer video. We give talks and workshops, not necessarily public lectures, but schools invite us to talk to teachers and students and parents and so on. Lots and lots of them. And one day, about a year into this project, we were invited onto a popular teaching podcast in the US. And this went really well. It was just about a 40-minute podcast where we described all of the learning strategies. It got a lot of attention. And I guess from doing that and just thinking about the different ways we could reach more people, we decided that one thing we could do was start our own podcast. And so with help from the funding from the Wellcome Trust, we did start a podcast. And the 20th episode is going to come out on Wednesday, and we do 2 per month, and actually here we're recording interviews with researchers, with practitioners, with teachers and students that we will then put on podcasts. So far it has been mostly us talking about different strategies. For example, the one on Wednesday I believe is about sleep and learning, the effective sleep and learning. We also talked about different kinds of effective strategies for learning that we cover on the blog a lot and in the posters, but we kind of dug into specific research studies in briefer bite-sized research episodes and then gave more bigger picture in our main episodes. We also provide detailed show notes so people can then go and explore further. They can find the articles that we refer to. We make the podcast very conversational, so we're not, throwing out citations left, right, and center during the podcast, but then we'll link to those and reference them in the show notes.
Exactly. actually interesting because we're purposefully trying to make sure that it's not filled with too many citations and we're not, reading too many titles of articles or talking about that sort of thing. And one thing that has come up among other researchers in our area is that we don't talk enough about the specific citations, and almost as if we're not talking enough in the academic currency. And at first, when we heard that constructive criticism, we were sort of, oh no, we're doing something wrong. But if you really think about it, it's not for the other researchers. So we always do give due diligence and put the things up on the podcast, but it's supposed to be conversational. It's supposed to be you can listen to it in your car, on the train, on the way to work or to school. And so the point isn't to just, name drop a bunch of people and give credit to all the different researchers, although that is important. So we've been trying to really think about what is the goal of our project, who is our audience, and what's going to be best in that way. We're not going to be able to please everybody.
Yeah, and speaking of pleasing everybody, we do seem to be pleasing everybody. So far so good with the ratings. Of course, iTunes doesn't give us very much information at all on the back end to show us how many people have listened or downloaded. But this is nice to see that people are enjoying the podcast, and we hope to continue it. We've been doing it for almost a year now, and we hope to keep doing it. Another thing we tried that was, I'm going to preface this by saying this was less effective. So again, as Steve was saying, try things, experiment. And so we experimented with the podcast and Facebook Live, and one thing we thought was more effective. So the idea behind Facebook Live was that we go live on our Facebook page and talk about similar sorts of things as on the podcast, but in a live environment where people would ask questions by typing them. And we even hoped that students would, we had this vision of students maybe as part of a class watching us on Facebook Live. But apparently Facebook isn't actually cool anymore, we're behind the times. So, we did, I think this is the first one that we did, and it was pretty popular, 2,000 views, 5,000 people reached, but if you look, if you look at the average watch time, I think that is calculated in minutes, right? So it's 35 seconds, I think. So what you see is people, looking at it for a little bit, half a minute, and then, keep it going on and off, but no one's consistently there, or a couple of people were, but on average, most of these 5,000 people just scrolled on by.
And so, in trying to evaluate this, we're looking, okay, we've got 31 peak live viewers. That's not great. It's not bad if we could reach 31 people, but the discrepancy between the number of video views and the peak live viewers told us that we weren't really interacting with people in the live way as much as we wanted to. And so we played around with the time, we played around with the day. To some extent, there are certain times that are going to work in some regions, but not in other regions. My mother was very disgruntled that we were doing some of this while she was at work. Of course, my mom, is not a teacher. She works for a big corporation, and so, she wasn't the audience. But there's always going to be a time that's not going to be great. And so, not to say that live events aren't going to be useful in some ways, but a monthly Facebook Live didn't seem to be reaching our audience in an effective way, and so we stopped doing the Facebook Lives and started focusing more on the podcast, which was having a larger effect. And it kind of makes sense because those podcasts can stay, and you can listen to it and feel like you're a part of the podcast, not just listening later when you're, quote, not supposed to be or when it's already over. But it can be, months later, people still give us comments about the first couple podcast episodes. And so I think it was important for us to pay attention to those things and try to make adjustments and not to think, well, we can't do it, or we've started, now we'll have to continue, just adjusting.
Yeah, and the Facebook Lives don't have great rewatch value because some of it's like, oh, look, someone's popped on, is asking a question. If you're watching that, it's kind of annoying if you're watching that after the time. So these are some of the topics that we tried to cover. This wasn't actually Facebook Live, but this is my daughter explaining space practice. She knows all the strategies. But, and again, our first one here was the most viewed, and then we kind of trailed off and decided to leave it at that.
And I will say, part of that might be right after that, the first couple is when Facebook was in the news a lot. And they did then start changing the way pages were viewed, and most pages are businesses Whereas our page is not a business, you have to play with, the differences between groups and pages and that sort of thing. They changed the way those things pop up on people's feeds, which honestly is probably a good thing for the general public, but for this particular purpose, it made it a little trickier, and we think that might have had something to do with it, but in any case, we focused on the thing that was having a better effect.
And, whatever we are doing with these experiments, it seems to be at least overall increasing the number of people that come to our page. This number, it's a lot on one hand because that's 3 million is a big number, but on the other hand, if you compare it with, say, I don't know, what would you compare it to, but some huge corporation, then it's tiny. So we're in between like a private blog that no one reads and then some, Gates Foundation's website or whatever. Somewhere in between, I mean, it's pretty good, but it's not like we're reaching as many teachers as we want to, so we still have room to grow. And of course, we couldn't do it without many funders, especially the Wellcome Trust, helping us with our podcast. So thank you.
Piece of the puzzle. Hello, I'm Ben Bleeder. I'm from the Wellcome Trust policy team, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro about how to make science successful for policymakers. And we're going to find similarities to things that have already been said, which is heartening. So I get researchers come to me and say, Ben, decisions are being made here. How do I influence those decisions? And I say, I don't know. Nobody does. It's very, very complicated. And the challenge is that people's vision of parliamentary decisions, be that in the UK, elsewhere in the world, in Brussels with the European Union, it's fiendishly complex processes. And the reason for that is because it's about people and changing their minds, and people are not very good at changing their minds. And so it's very important that when we're trying to take research to policymakers, that we think about the variety of people who do make decisions in that process, that it's not just the people who sit in the chambers here, it's people throughout the country, all different parts of it, different levels of the machinery. And then we think about how each of them wants to interact with research and evidence in order to change their mind and change their decisions. So it's worth starting with a little bit about what policy actually is in terms of research. And the way we talk about it is usually in two groups. There is what we call research for policy. So this is where your research is applied to a policy decision that affects people in the real world. So say for the Wellcome Trust, a lot of things we do are about health. So say there's some new treatments coming on, or there's a change, or say bringing in the sugar tax on sugary drinks, is that going to have an effect? And you have pieces of research and pieces of evidence that will help decide whether or not that's a sensible policy or not. So that's what we call research for policy. Interestingly, researchers often don't think about the other side, which is policy for research, which is equally important if you want to keep jobs, is that a lot of the political decisions that get made decide how research itself is done, whether that's the amount of funding that flows into it, whether it's the visa regimes which let people travel across the world to come and do research in different parts of the country, whether it's the regulations that decide what research is allowed, what isn't, whether or not treatments can progress through. So it's very important that we think about there's two sides that you can interact with. Often people only think about the first one, it's how do I apply my research? But it's also equally important that as a member of society and as a scientist, you think, what enables me to do my best? And can I help shape those decisions as well, such that my job can continue in the way that I think I can deliver the most science? So the question then is, who should I influence? And most people usually think about parliamentarians as being MPs. And they're very important people. It's important that you do try and engage them as much as you can, but there's a lot of other routes in that you want to think about if you want people to listen to your research and what your findings are. So on this list is a whole variety. This is not comprehensive, but just a few ideas about the people you might want to be thinking about. The top level is also ministers, very important level. They make a lot of big decisions, very hard to get hold of, very hard to influence. They get a lot of information all of the time. They are pushed and influenced and lobbied from many, many different sides. So it's important to try and start to peel down the list of like, where are they getting their information from? How can you interact with people below them? The next layer down is MPs themselves and their staff. So most MPs will have a small office, usually 1 or 2 people perhaps, which tells you what that's overwork and bring them up. They will be interested in particular topics that relate to them. So not every MP is interested in every single thing. They get a vote on most things, so they're after some basic information, but usually they have priorities, things that they really matter to them, things that they've campaigned on with the public who voted them in. And so you want to try and find MPs who are interested in a particular thing you're talking about. And when it comes to education and learning, it's a great topic. It's a very broad topic. It's one that a lot of people are interested in. A lot of people have constituents who care about this sort of thing. So it's not hard to find people who are interested in a very general sense, and then you take them down to the specifics of what you have to say. There's lots of websites, They Work For You being a common one here in the UK, but there's equivalents across the world of listing what MPs have stated their interests are so that people can know who to go and talk to. You can search it, you can rank them and try and work out who's the most appropriate person. So do have a look at those resources. The other places are when you start to get groups of people together. So political parties is a very sensible one. It's mostly useful when elections are coming around and people are writing manifestos. Here at Welcome, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to engage with all the different parties when they're drafting their manifestos up. The promises that they make there are very public. They will go out and talk about them in speeches, they will publish a big document, and then over the next 4 or 5 years we can hold them to account based on that. So do think about those key opportunity windows. They don't come around that often, but when they do, it's a really big chance to have some major change in how people approach big decisions. The other one that we interact with a lot is select committees. So this is another part of that machinery, and it's a slightly hidden part. You occasionally see it on TV, it's a picture like this, and the MPs are the ones around the curve table. And what they do is they pick a particular topic, and there's lots of different select committees in our area, so the one we interact with a lot is the Science and Technology Committee. They will pick a particular topic and hold an inquiry on it. And they will call people to come in from outside of politics to come and talk about particular aspects, and so the poor person at the front here is being interviewed and desperately trying to defend their points. And the MPs will throw questions at them and really try and probe why certain decisions should be made, and is the government doing the right thing. The committee then, which is composed of MPs from across all the parties, will then publish a big report. They'll often go on the news and they'll say, the Science and Technology Committee says that not enough is being done about X. It's a fantastic way to get yourself on the radar, to get your research on the radar. It's a great way for researchers to come along because those committees have a little bit more time. They're going to be a little bit more thorough about digging into the details, and you can sit there and tell them about exactly the sorts of things that are going on. So it's a great way of interacting with them. Not only can you go along and talk to them if they want to speak to you, you can also submit things on paper, which I'll come back to in a minute. So there's lots of routes in to target these committees. The other routes are other components of the political system, so whether it's the civil service, and you can find the right person to speak to in different departments and help feed information in there. They're always looking for evidence. They're often very technical people who will sit down very happily and talk the actual specifics, which is nice. There's regulating bodies, and then there's also the devolved parliament, which is interesting to think about. So there's lots of different components within the UK that you can seek to influence, and that's before you even get to things like influencing Brussels. So the question then is, I've chosen my group, or several of these groups, how do I then change these people's minds? The easiest way in the UK and many other places is to have a look at consultations. So often people don't realise the fact that the government is actually very good at asking questions and admitting it doesn't know the answer yet. And what they will do is publish a big consultation saying anyone in the UK, absolutely anyone, can submit some evidence about what they think a particular change should be on an area. So the consultation will say, we're going to change policy on sugar tax, for example. We're thinking about implementing a sugar tax. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? And lots and lots and lots of people will send things in, all the way from individuals through organisations, universities, research groups, all sorts of places will send stuff in, Working Trust as well. And it's a really great way of getting your voice heard. It's an important thing that you send this stuff in and that it gets recorded. They get huge amounts of information, but they are set up to sift through it and start picking things out. It's a great opportunity to send stuff in at exactly the right moment when the government is making a decision about it. So it's a very effective way of influencing. The other ways that are less reactive, a bit more proactive, if you want to try and push an agenda that's not out there yet, is that you start writing to people. So, put together briefings and evidence packs and write to the minister in charge. You can write to your MP, that's a very effective way. They are there to represent you as a person who lives in their constituency and works in their constituency. Write to them and say that this is something that really matters to you and that you think that they should be pushing it in Parliament. You're paying their wage, so get your money's worth. The other way is to think about, can you invite MPs into events, bring them to the university where you work, bring them to things you're hosting, give them a tour of your lab. There's lots of different ways that you can bring people down and introduce them to the things that you do, particularly when it's your local constituency. MPs like doing it. They like to have their picture on Twitter with them standing talking to researchers. Make the most of that. Get that chance to have a chat with them, and they are very open to it, surprisingly so. And the other way is to just openly publish briefings and start putting stuff out there and trying to get people interested in it, making it publicly available and directing people towards it when they ask questions. So then I thought it would be helpful to give you a bit of advice about what does a good policy document look like, and it's nothing like a research paper. And as a person who's come from academia and escaped, it's been a big change. It's a really big change to think about how you write for a totally different audience. They don't want you to labour about the methods and all this sort of stuff. They want to know answers. They want to know what you found up front. But at the same time, you have to show rigour. So I've shamelessly stolen this from someone who writes it far better than I do, and I really encourage you to go and look at Chris Wicky's paper. He is a professor just down the road at the London School, but also has been Chief Scientific Advisor for both the Department for International Development and currently the Department for Health. So he's very, very, very well placed to tell people how this is done. And he's written an incredibly accessible paper that's just very nicely written and very encouraging, saying about the different factors that you should think about when you're putting together a policy document based on your research. And they're things that people will often think are obvious, but it's hard to sit down and double check you've actually done them. It's worth just saying, you know, have I really taken out all the jargon? Have I carefully set out what I'm trying to achieve? Have I made my things searchable? Sounds ridiculous. They get thousands of things sent to them every day. How do I make sure that I clearly say which particular policy or which area of policy I'm trying to help them make a decision on? So do go and have a look at Chris's paper, and hopefully some of those things will be useful if you are thinking about putting together a policy paper. It takes a lot of time. One of the big things we work on here at the Wellcome Trust is how researchers are rewarded for doing that. At the moment, things like the REF process and other funding bodies are not always that good at recognising the fact that this takes an enormous amount of time, that it's not a published journal paper and that it's not adding to your track record on your CV or your grant submission, but we're really fighting to make sure that grant committees know how this works, that they know you put a lot of effort in and they value it. So do take the time, it's worth it, I promise. Who can help? You're not on your own. There are lots and lots of different organisations that are set up to help researchers, scientists and other people channel their thoughts and the evidence into the right people's hands. One of the key ones is learning societies, so there's hundreds and hundreds of them around the world. It's worth having a look at the learning societies in your area, whether or not they're able to have their own policy people. They can help you put together policy documents. They can help pull together lots of different members to produce one document, make it easy for people to read. And they will also help you target who you need to take your stuff to. So, you know, these learning societies are built by the researchers who are members of them, so they're there for exactly this purpose. The other one is national academies. So some of you may be members, you may know people who are members of the national academies, like the Royal Society. I know there's someone here today actually from the Royal Society, I think. So I will say that the picture has been updated slightly. It's not quite like this anymore, far fewer wigs. But they've been around hundreds of years. They really know how it works. They are very, very good at working out how to get evidence into government at the right moment to the right people in the right way. So make the most of these sorts of things. They host lots of events that you can go along to and learn more. They host Links Day, which is a fantastic way of getting things connected together. So do go along and engage with this sort of stuff. The last one is campaign groups. Things like the Campaign for Science and Engineering case. And you've got other groups which are on specific areas, such as the Roundtree Foundation, which are organisations that are set up primarily to try and push for policy change. So they are very keen to share everything that they do. You can look at their websites and see what sort of outputs they're doing. Have a look at how they write stuff, how they interact, how they design things to make them more engaging. You can learn a lot from looking at the places that do it well. So I thought this would be a very good opportunity to quickly tell you about what Wellcome is doing, to try and justify my job. We care a lot about this area. We fund about 14,000 people across the world, and it's really important to us that we get impact from that. It's a lot of money, and we want to make sure that the people that we fund are supported and have a route through to having an impact on the thing that they're researching. It's, as I said, much harder than we expected, and we want to make sure that people feel that they've got the skills that they need to do that. We run training courses, we support internships with policy placements. We are very, working very, very hard on how we use the policy team internally, so can we give more support to the people we fund, help them channel into the right place in government and have an impact. And we're also working about how do we give researchers themselves a bigger voice. And one of the big things that we've developed in the last 6 months or so is the Together Science Can campaign down there at the bottom, which some of you may have come across. This is a very broad, all-encompassing, all-research campaign to try and give researchers across the world a voice in decisions that are being made. There is a concern that particularly around the movement of people around the world, the ability of people to move to different countries and feel welcome there in science is getting harder. And we have put together this campaign as a way of trying to raise those voices. A lot of people have a lot to say about this, And together, Science Can campaign is there to try and help pull them together and make sure that they're heard. So there's a lot you can do. And I wanted to finish on a message that is that don't get demoralised if you do want to join into this. When policy decisions are made, it's very easy as a researcher and as researchers here to think that people make very, very straightforward logical decisions based on the evidence. Yes or no, it's right or it's wrong. It's a lot more complicated than that, and the easiest way to get on the nerves of a policymaker is to think that they're being irrational. The fact is that there's probably more different ways that they think about this. They think it through the lens of the evidence, and they care enormously about getting it right. They care about whether or not it's going to work. They want to see the numbers. They want to see the stats. They want to hear your ideas. That's one thing they're thinking about. The second thing they're thinking about is their values. They've been elected by a group of people who may have very particular values about how they think society should be run, how they think an education system should be run. They are paid to represent those people. They will come to that with a huge range of different values that they consider, that they're very open about and that are published, that they will bring to that debate and combine with that evidence to make a decision. And the last one is, particularly when you use the civil servants, is that you can come up with the best policy in the world, but if it can't be afforded, it's useless. So feasibility is very important, and if you can bring that into your research, it makes it incredibly impactful when you do talk to people. We need to be delivering solutions. You can be ambitious, you can push people, you can tell them they're doing stuff wrong, but you need to come up with evidence and ideas that are meaningful for everyday life. And so when you do want to get engaged with policy, which I really encourage you to do, it's the most rewarding thing. It's fantastic to see things you've worked on carry through, is to bear this in mind, that you are one component in many, but you're a very, very, very important component. And although influencing policymakers is very difficult, it's something that's incredibly important to do. It's not just as a scientist, as a researcher, as someone who's producing stuff, but also as a citizen. It's important that we remember that the work we do does fit into a wider society, and that we do, in many ways, have an obligation to try and get stuff out there, and that you will enjoy it if you do. So, yeah, give it a go. Don't get put off. It is very hard. There's lots and lots of people to help. And if I can answer any questions now, later, in the future, do get in touch. The policy team here is very friendly, by and large. And we're very keen to help and to hear your concerns. Many of us are researchers ourselves, but we're very keen to hear what the challenges you're meeting are. Where are you finding it a struggle? We're designing all these training courses and stuff, but as has been said, we really want to tailor it to the people. What do people need? What do people want? Where are people getting stuck? So let's make this a start of the conversation, and do get in touch. It'd be nice to help further. So thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much for all that speaking. They were great. Have we got any questions?
Question really, I think, is probably for Steve. I noted this morning that Paul Howard-Jones mentioned that teaching was a performance, and you as a comedian, have you got any transfer of skills that might go across from being on stage to being a teacher in a classroom?
Am I on? I'm not. Do I press the button? Is that what it's on? Am I on now? No? Right, I'll power. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I teach in universities. I don't teach anybody younger than that, so I'm not sure. But teaching for me is definitely a performance. I am as exhausted after a 3-hour training session as I am after a 3-hour show. I use most of the same skills. But that might just be the way I do it. So I will happily work with I will happily work with any teachers who want to try and stand up. Part of my programme is that I have these open things that anyone can come and try their skills out in front of lovely, safe adult audiences. I've started working with history teachers recently, but not science teachers yet. But the opportunity's there. If anyone wants to try it, send them to me. It costs them nothing. You just need a thing.
So you're not prepared to give us a tip?
Oh, you want a tip? Right, 2 basic tips. If you want to be funny, have an attitude to everything. So every single thing that comes up, you should be immediately able to say whether you like it or hate it, even if it is the carbon cycle. The second thing is that Rayleigh cycle, the Krebs cycle is the best. And also you've got to be very specific. If you're ever trying to do a joke, you're trying to lead people in one direction, take them in another one at the end. The trick is to make them think that it's real. The way you do that is you're very specific about everything. So you should use lots and lots of detail, but you have the detail if you're a teacher or a researcher. Do come on my very expensive standard training course.
This is, well, in my mind, more a question for everything down the neighbourhood, it probably goes for everybody. If you're trying to get some sort of behavioural change in the group that you're identifying, you can imagine two ways it might do it. You might sort of create this kind of bottom-up bubbling of enthusiasm, or you might kind of get it sort of mandated down from the top. Do you have any experience and sort of pros and cons of which of those are best? Do you have any opinions about that? And any sort of, any tips?
I think it's a combination of both, but more of the bubbling up from the bottom. It's sort of giving in a bit of information from the top, because what we know is what we know from research, so that's what we know, but then there's so much that the teachers know that they bring to the table, and then it kind of, comes together, the bubbling up from the bottom and from the top. But really, we understand that just showing up and, bombarding teachers with, evidence and how to do things is never going to work, and it's also just wrong, because teachers do know a lot that we don't know, so it doesn't make sense to be doing it in a top-down kind of way. At the same time, it's not like we're constructing everything from scratch, because that's the other extreme.
And I think there is, rightfully so, sometimes animosity that comes with the force from the top, right? People are making decisions who maybe are quite removed from the actual day-to-day what's going on, and so we early on have learned to say, do this because it's good, and here's the reason. It doesn't come across quite as well as having a more open conversation. And of course, if we're having an open conversation, say, about learning styles, it's not a question of, what is a myth versus what is not, but sort of the way of approaching it and the way of talking about it and making it more of a conversation. It seems, at least with teachers, from our perspective, to be more productive. That said, if it's mandated, so then people don't have choices, but I think sometimes when things are mandated, they don't always end up working in practice the way they should, and that can sometimes lead to failure, and it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's really my 2 cents. Imagine Ben has some things to say.
Yeah, from a policymaker's perspective, I think, again, it's very interesting. I think you can get a long way from either direction. The way you interact with them is very different. So I'd say if you want something from the top, you have to offer something flashy that can go on the news and talk about the next day. They like that. It's very short turnaround. You don't have a lot of time. So it's usually something you've worked on for a while. From the other end, you want something, a constituent backbencher, wants something that they can sit across the table from their constituent at their surgery every Friday and talk about in a more personal way. So they want to be able to talk about new treatments, how the hospital's coming on, whether the schools are improving. And so you want to target in a very different way. If you can ideally you do both. Ideally you give backbenchers a license to get involved in something and campaign on it because they know that it's a priority from the top. And that's where I relate back to those manifestos. What happens in a manifesto often doesn't get played out for, to the end of the 5 years when people sort of realize they know problems. But it's an incredibly useful tool to be able to go, the top brass said that this was really important to them. So we think that you might be interested in this particular issue. And that way you can gather momentum. And eventually it will come back to the top brass that are like, wow, there's a lot of people talking about this, we can make a good news story about this. And they will come to you and say, what do you actually want? Because we're going to do it tomorrow, so decide now. And so at that point it's really helpful. You've done all the thinking, you've done all the planning, you've got people behind it, and that you know that a lot of MPs are already on board with the details, not just the flashy top line. So yeah, I think you're right, that there's value in both.
One of the things that I do is help universities change the way they work, so public engagement is part of every job. And now I totally advocate both at once. Only because if you're trying to create a groundswell at the bottom, that can make the change at the top much easier when they see how much is going on. But secondly, change at the top, you're always waiting for somebody's permission that might never come. Another priority might appear, or they might decide that isn't the way to go. If you've done nothing but trying to focus on that decision, at the end you have nothing. Whereas if you've also built the groundswell at the bottom, then at least there's a big change there. Maybe you can wait 4 years for the next chance to try and change the thinking at the top. So I always say do both. Manage your risk so that you're at least creating something while you focus on that kind of big switch where the country goes, oh yeah, we're going to value public engagement from now.
of interacting with teachers. What's been the most surprising question that you've been asked that has thrown you? As in, maybe we are talking to psychologists, maybe distill the research evidence, simplify, make it sensible, easy to absorb. But what have the new questions been that have really thrown you, that should be investigated by researchers like us that have come from teachers or educators?
Something that really threw me, it doesn't throw me anymore because now everybody asks that question, is the definition of learning and the fact that when what we study as learning isn't necessarily what teachers think of. And so that disconnect was something that at first really threw me because I assumed that we were on the same page about learning, and it turned out that we were talking about one thing and teachers were hearing another thing or hoping we would be talking about another thing, and it's kind of joining those up.
Even within different disciplines, I think this Leah mentioned this at the very beginning, talking in a common language and realizing that one person's definition of attention isn't the same thing, and we're focusing on these different aspects. And I think that was, even just sort of having to go down to that level and hash out what we mean when we say X or Y, and developing a common language was one of the more difficult pieces. But once we were able to develop a common language, at least to some extent, we started to learn sort of, when we say metacognition, we mean this. When we're talking about metacognition in the classroom, we mean more of that. That became really helpful, and then the questions stopped seeming so sort of different or surprising, and we kind of all realized we were talking about some of the same things. If you mean specific research questions too, we get a lot of questions about specific individuals, individuals on the autism spectrum, individuals who are suffer from ADHD, dysgraphia, all of these different things, and we're not, our area isn't, us personally, I should say, not cognitive psychology as a whole, but our specific area is not equipped to deal with those types of things, and I think it made, at least it made me realize how truly specialized we are when we dive, deep into that PhD realm and drill down into areas where I'm a cognitive psychologist, but not all cognition areas are my expertise. I think it really decided for me to see how narrow I was and how many people it really takes at the table in order to ask meaningful questions.
I wanted to ask maybe it's a little bit more of a philosophical question. You've all come at this as scientists trying to talk about how to communicate to the general public. And I'm just curious because seems to be a big evolution of moving even journals to create these other spaces. Like, for example, on the page of Harvard Journal has a science and learning community, which is going to do very similar things. But what we're finding even in those spaces, I was just the Society for Neuroscience, the same thing, American Education Research Association, everybody's having the same conversation. So the question to you is, do you think that moving away from having these very successful translational researchers like Paul or Janet, who already do these things very well and communicate this, but do you think there's this new space now? It's a different type of professional. Because I had the same conversation with someone on the communication side who was asking me how they needed to know more about the science because they were given a job to sort of create an infographic. But we have people, you're coming at it from two different directions or three or four different directions. Do you see a different type of professional now, sort of, we need that. We need that more. It's not just somebody who would decide, okay, I'm a researcher, I'll embrace my job as a communicator to the general public, or vice versa. I'm not somebody from communications who's not at the same job, but there's a new type of professional that's needed that actually walks that fine line. Just throwing it out there.
Can I ask where you're based?
I teach a course at Harvard University. It's called Neuroscience Learning, but I also work in the social science research facility. And so it's coming from both of those different angles, because at every single one of these conferences this year, it's become a whole one-day conference on communication. But everybody's asking the exact same questions, and you have a handful of people who do this really well. But I'm not only going to be a translational researcher, but I know how to communicate. It's a different skill set.
Well, can I answer that? I hope that the answer to your question is yes, because that's what I'm planning to do. So, if the answer is no, then I'm screwed. But if the answer is yes, then I'll feed back to you in a couple of years when I've left my faculty position and I'm doing just what you're describing.
The reason I asked where you're from is that I think to a large extent you're describing quite a large industry in the UK. Because over here, public engagement with research, because I've spent some time talking to people based in Cambridge about this, the way we do it works very differently, the support structures we have work very differently. There's a whole industry, both of facilitators, so people to help researchers connect with different communities and audiences, some of those based in funders, some of them based in universities, some based in urban societies, but also mediators, so people whose job it is to sit in the middle and translate that research and carry it to different audiences. There's also been a big push across the universities towards impact, and the idea now that you can be a practitioner researcher, even in something like neuroscience, is now live, and your university can get funding for you to be that kind of person. And I've known professors be recruited partly because of their ability to engage with communities, as well as the fact they're excellent researchers. So they're there to be that interface point. And I think it's just a thing that it's quite common in this country to have all kinds of models like the model that you're talking about. But I know that it is much rarer in the US, partly because you've not had the same, so I'm going to look at them for this one, but the big kind of House of Lords papers about how science communication in the UK just didn't work in the 20th century. So we're trying to reformulate the whole thing. There's been a big legislative push towards this stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and echoing that exactly, I think the rise of science communication on the agenda and the importance and how it's valued in the UK has dramatically changed in the last decade and a half or so. And when we're, I was talking about the idea of trying to encourage researchers to engage with policy and how to do that, we're very much modeling on the same thing, which is you need to put resources behind it, you need to help people train up, it needs to be a long-term investment in people's careers, and you need to value that skill later on in their career. And I do think that those interface careers that you're talking about are on the rise, and that people can build a funded career. Traditionally, you had to stick with a particular funding pot, and if you took something out of that, you had to find small bits of funding and try and build it together. It's much easier now, I think, to begin to blur those boundaries. And reflecting on a model that perhaps is relevant there is, if we look in the UK and across the world, kind of clinical researchers in medicine is a very good example of people melding two very, very different sets of skills, but which are very complementary when you bring them together. So someone who's in the clinic, taking out kidneys 2 days a week, and then has a lab 3 days a week, working on exactly the sorts of problems that they're coming up against every day. And if you can build career paths where someone is supported at that sort of interface and valued on both of them, not made to do 2 jobs in 1 week, it can be incredibly rewarding for the whole system. So yeah, I do hope that we see that happen for communication. I think we're already getting there, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we do the same for policy.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I agree with everything that's been said. I think the answer is yes. Though I immediately popped in my head, Sarah and I were giving a talk at Research Ed in Rugby last summer, and there was Research Ed brings together a group of teachers and a group of researchers and sort of puts everyone in some ways like this, puts everyone in the same room. And one of the teachers asked a really interesting question where they said, how could someone ever apply science of learning if they've not spent at least, 5 years teaching in the classroom? Teaching kids, teaching pupils, younger, not university, like what we do. And to that, some of the researchers responded, well, how could anyone accurately apply research findings and determine cause and effect relationships without spending, 9 years being heavily trained and doing nothing but that to learn how to do it? And I sort of made an offhand comment at times where I said, well, there isn't that person who, went and got their PhD in neuroscience and spent, 10, 15 years doing that, and then is now teaching kindergarten, has been doing that for 10 years and is ready to start learning. That person is very uncommon. And one of the risks of having someone in between is that maybe you have to be careful to make sure that they understand both sides, right? You don't want them to fail both of those questions. And so I think to some extent, yes, there should be people in the middle who are helping, but there also needs to be this sort of joining together of experts on both sides and recognizing, the strengths of each of those approaches and areas, and then also the areas where we are not as experts and can learn and listen from one another, and to, bringing multiple people to the table, and maybe having some of those people in the middle who can kind of go back and forth and speak both languages is really important. But in order to do that, you have to have a very open mind, and you have to be very willing to both teach and learn at the same time. I think that's important.
Just to add before we move on to the next question, just to highlight in the programme for tomorrow, we have a session about teacher-led research and translation as well. So if we're upskilling the other side, and you are doing some of that work also for us. Cool.
First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for some really interesting but also really helpful presentations. Really great. My question to you for do you feel that you're getting enough feedback using the methods you're using about what message is being taken away from what you're communicating? And if so, could you maybe give us some examples of some misinterpretations of what you said that are most concerning?
I will say we always want more feedback for researchers, that sort of we'll never be satisfied in that way. We always want to know more. So we are getting some, but we're always open to constructive criticism.
Without going too much into the specifics, one of the most misinterpreted strategies that we talk about is interleaving, and that's because, oh, well, there you go, we don't even agree. That's actually a good point. But interleaving is something we talk about, and it's the idea of mixing up different things that you're studying instead of blocking them. The problem with that area of research is it's relatively new as it applies to education, and so there's not all that much of an evidence base, and I almost regret that we even put out information about it, because for some reason that is one of the pieces that is most interesting, or maybe because it's so puzzling, teachers kind of grab onto it, and then there's all sorts of different interpretations of it that are just not based on evidence, because there isn't that evidence yet, and so that's something that keeps me up at night. Literally, teachers are interleaving, and then they're tweeting saying, "Oh, is this interleaving?" Like, no, that's not interleaving. Or we don't know, we can't, we don't know, we don't have the evidence to answer this question that you're asking, but they're going way ahead of what the research says. Dual coding also.
Yeah, well, I think even just to speak generally, part of the problem tends to be that we all really, really want a formula. So when we talk about any of these things, interleaving, speech tactics, retrieval, the question is always like, when exactly, for how long, and how often? And the answer is always it depends, because there's so many different factors at play, and it depends on the age of the people. To some extent, that age matters, but more importantly, their background knowledge and their expertise, their ability to engage in certain type of processing tasks. So how well they can write, how well they can read and sort of make inferences and comprehend. And so that's why we talk a lot about flexible guiding principles, because the teacher as a practitioner needs to be able to make adjustments. And one of the reasons why it's so good for us to know what's the causal mechanism, what's creating this cause and effect relationship to produce learning, is because we can say, if you adjust this piece, it's fine. Just make sure this other thing is there, because that's really the bulk of it. If you want to change it from a writing activity to a speaking or something else, that's fine. But in order to really do that, you have to have a very, very large base of research, and you have to be able to keep up on a lot of the mountains and mountains of evidence that's there. And to that extent, that's why I think researchers really need to do a better job of communicating, at least with somebody, even if it's an intermediary, because that's a full-time job, keeping up with that. So sometimes those things are misinterpreted, but just do X, then everything will be better. And there's no magic memory pill, right? No magic learning pill. So I don't think. Now I'm scared to say.
Thank you. I think I have a question for Ben. So my impression is that relatively few MPs or policymakers have a science training. It's seen as quite a special interest, niche type of background. And the same seems to be true for a lot of people in the media. So it seems like a lot of the discussion around policy is sort of orchestrated by people who don't necessarily have science training. I wonder if that question was correct, and if so, if you see any role for Wellcome in either providing some sort of basic level of scientific literacy for a broader range of policymakers and opinion guiders in our country, or if there's something to be done in terms of making those careers more attractive to people who've got science training. Because it seems somehow not very representative of the general professional population.
Yeah, you're right. It's not very logical profession. That's not the restoration scientist one. You're very right. I think by and large your impression is correct. The vast majority of parliamentarians don't have any science background. Most of them last up with them 14. It's a real challenge. A lot of what we do in the team is about, to put it better way, education. You know, you're trying to build up the building blocks of what science is, how it operates, who works in it, because they have all of the same misconceptions that many other parts of the public do about it being, you know, white old men. It's exactly that same challenge. And the only thing I would say is that whilst most parliamentarians don't have a huge grasp of science itself, they have a huge enthusiasm for what science does. If it helps people get better, if it helps kids learn faster, if it's all of those things, they really, really care about that stuff. And so what you have to be able to do is tie it to what you're trying to achieve. And I think science over the last decade or two has got much better at being that long-sighted. And obviously, you know, as someone who worked on one virus protein during assembly, it had nothing to do with anything really, but it was part of a process. And you talk about the disease that it created and the impact of that. And so we are very careful to try and make sure that we carry any specific technical messages with a reason why it's important, because, you know, they will listen to that, they will respond to that. It's also important that you tailor it to your audience. So some people care more about health, education, some care about economic impact, you create jobs. There are lots of ways you can get that message through. And I would say that we pride ourselves on trying to make sure that everything we produce is readable by anyone. We publish everything, it's on the website. Not many people do it, but you know, it's there if they want to. And it's very important for us that as a policy team we don't stray too far down into the thick of it and then nobody really knows what we're talking about at all. It's hard to do sometimes because you're engaging with a machine that is often quite like the thick of it. But yes, I would say that whilst we are really pushing on that education front, it's something that we all need to do, and that when people engage with their parliamentarians and they write to them, it's important that we remind them that this is what a scientist looks like, this is how they work, this is why it's important to their constituency and to their lives and everyone else's. So, yes, it's a combination of the two of this.
Just to echo something Ben said, I agree with what Ben said, but I also would like to remind you there's a whole critical research literature out there about how science and policy is formed, and one of the questions people have looked at a lot is MPs with science backgrounds and those without science backgrounds. I can't remember all the detail. I'd urge you to read a blog by Jack Stilger, where he basically very systematically takes apart the idea that having more MPs with science degrees would actually be useful in any sort of way. Because it's a temptation for us as people with science degrees to think if everyone had science degrees, they just do the things that we think are obviously the right things to do. It doesn't seem that that is the case. So I urge you to go and read Jack Stilger's blog about it. And his entire work.
So I had a question about the videos that you're making on YouTube. I was wondering if you were also doing videos for teachers. Because also you didn't mention it, so perhaps you're already doing it, but there's also teachers in training who at this very moment they're around 20 years old, and I'm sure they would be interested in seeing YouTube videos of the teacher, and if you want the strategies to be applied in the classroom, that perhaps a way to get them in.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because we are in the process of combining a few grants with some other individuals who do science communication in the U.S. to try to do exactly that. The videos that we already produced is even sort of a strong word, because it was it was a first attempt. The goal was just to put something on YouTube to try and even expose some of these students who just maybe stumble across it, these terms and these ideas. It wasn't necessarily the best tool to utilize in the classroom, and for that reason we are talking quickly, because there's research showing that when it moves along, you can hold attention, and you're trying to balance those things a bit slow. Maybe it's easier to learn from.
in the classroom, but then you're not going to need attention and supposed to, they all sort of try to combine. But specific videos for teachers and working with teachers in training, kind of doing these things and what that might look like is something that we are currently working on. We're trying to figure out the funding for that.
I guess it's a question for maybe all of you. I'm wondering about this challenge of facing oversimplifications in communicating neuroscience to both teachers and policymakers. And how do you face these oversimplifications? Because as a teacher, it's very difficult to know who to trust. I mean, also as a researcher, it's hard to know who knows what they're talking about. And I think there's a misconception that if someone is a professor or works in an academic environment, they know what they're saying. And I've been to talks, particularly one comes to mind with a professor from the US, from a prestigious university, and she was saying things like, if you don't make mistakes, your brain won't grow.
I think I know exactly what you mean.
Or, for example, something like, genes don't matter at all. Anyone can do anything as long as they put their minds to it. And of course, I'm not saying that we should go and say genes matter and you can't do anything. I mean, it's predetermined. But actually, is it okay that people go around and say these things as slogans to teachers?
Mine's short, and yours will not be. And so, I guess my rule of thumb is that anyone, my feeling is that anyone who says something and just it's a phrase, it's a slogan, and that's the end of it, that cannot possibly be the whole story, because humans are extremely complex. I was sort of hated when chemists or individuals say things about hard sciences, and psychologists and neuroscientists use soft science. And so no, people are really hard to study. We're really complex. And so anyone who says, if you don't do X, you won't learn, or you must do X in order to learn, that's a very simplified version, because if it were that simple, we wouldn't be talking about it. We would just know. It would be as simple as saying, make sure you drink your water every day. And so that's sort of a rule of thumb.
So I think that what you mentioned brings up an important point of you can't just use the heuristic of, oh, this happens to be a professor who's at Stanford, for example, who is talking about, for example. And what you need to really focus on is whether they're talking about their own area of expertise or not. So in that particular case, this person is using research or misconceptions about research from other areas and bringing it into their message. Whereas in certain other cases, people are talking about their own research and not going beyond and drawing conclusions that are way, way beyond their own research, or bringing in other research and kind of like cartoon version. That's, I think, where the danger comes in, where even though somebody's a professor, not a professor of neuroscience, but then using neuroscience to state a claim, that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in classic literature. I'm a professor, but that's not my area of expertise. And so if I start talking about that sort of thing, I can say I'm a professor, but I mean, that should be taken with a grain of salt. The same way, someone who's an expert in classic literature may not have as much expertise in teaching. Part of the problem with education is that because we've all gone to school and we teach our own areas when we're at university, it feels like a very familiar area, and to some extent it is. We have more experience than someone who hasn't been to school or someone who doesn't teach, but that doesn't mean the application of the research is there. That doesn't mean that they're trained in that specific application or execution of that research. And so it's sort of drilling in to figure out, what is their training and how is that training being applied in how?
I just wanted to ask all researchers present what you're going to do about it. Because the thing about a case like this is that you can't stop people doing this sort of talk. The market dictates that people who are willing to give simple answers will always have an audience willing to pay for those simple answers. You can't stop them, the only thing you can do is drown them out. And the only thing you can do is get your entire research body all getting involved research base is as easy to find as the one that is a bit fake. But it just needs all of you pulling together. Unfortunately, neuronates especially are super sticky. The minute you make something up that's snappy about the brain, it's going to take at least 10 times more effort to get it out of there. I mean, you probably all read something today about either 10% of your brain, or left brain, right brain people, or any of those things. It's really hard to get rid of them. But yeah, you're just going to have to all, lots of you pull together.
Okay, one last question.
It's a question for everyone. If you're a PhD student or you're at any level of your career and you want to move into science communication, do you have any practical tips?
Moving professionally.
Yeah, so as in like, no, as in finish a PhD because that's super important. And then you have to communicate, not even necessarily what you've done during your PhD because you're not necessarily super important, but just communicate in science and do you have any tips?
I do a lot of career advice to exactly this kind of people. It depends what kind of science communication you want to get into. Because actually, if you want to be a TV presenter on science, as lots of people do, you have to stay in research. Because TV companies want to put professors on TV, they don't want to put professional communicators on TV. If you want to support other people getting involved in communication, or you want to write or something like that, the thing to remember is every job you go for after your PhD, a lot of other people who've just finished their PhD and are sick of science will be going for that job. So I think so many old PhD students for those jobs. You have to outcompete them, and the way you do that is you get as much experience as possible during your PhD. So you take every single bit of work experience or internships, you get involved with projects, you work on your university newspaper, you make videos, you blog, any of those things, and as many of those things as possible. You can outcompete everybody else and then you can get the jobs. Where are you based? Sorry? Whereabouts? There's probably local organisations who can help you. I don't know the money.
No, but we're looking also at how to build our own project. I'm very interested in that. There's more as a sort of I see all these people having these amazing careers after research where they're 1 foot in research and 1 foot in the real world.
Yeah.
That sounds really good, but they all seem to have just sort of randomly fallen out of the skies in that position.
Yeah, they have them by the way. Because they won't tell you how they really got.
See, and I was just going to say, I feel like I've gotten, and it's not that I won't tell you, it's that I don't really know. I don't know what I did. I will say, just sort of generally, because I'm 4 years post PhD. Yes, 4 years post PhD. And so I haven't been, professor and doing this stuff that long, but I will say one of the things that's been essential for Yana and I, and was really critical when I was a graduate student, is trying to figure out creative ways to demonstrate that what I was doing with science communication had value in the academic world. And there are ways to make that connection. It does not have to just be, these are the things you're doing for academic currency, and these are the things that you're doing for this science communication, and you better make sure you're demonstrating that this extra stuff isn't interfering. Because we just talked about grants. Guess what? Universities really like grants, and they don't really care if, to some extent they do, but they don't care if you're doing just research on the grant or if there's grants to make videos, say. They care more about the overhead. So if there are ways that you can sort of demonstrate, when I do these things, it produces these new research opportunities, I'm able to write these papers, and I'm producing these materials, and they all sort of flow together. That actually produces in many academic realms a really nice package. Some places, maybe at least I'm thinking top institutions in the US, might only want to know how many papers or publishing and grants are getting. They might see anything else as detracting. Places that are a little bit more open to just sort of general education. So I'm at Rhode Island College, it's not a big place. It's a research and a teaching place, and that allows you to put that package together. That can be really helpful too. And it's not number one, but sorry.
Great. So now we're going to move on to the second poster session. So again, people can go through this or out the back and down the stairs. Can I have another round of applause for this one?